Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks.
When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41.
It's the nursery rhyme that just refuses to die. I think I learned that skipping rope in second grade. I didn't even know who Lizzie Borden was.
Not at all.
I just knew she was the lady with the axe. It's catchy, it's rhythmic, and it's basically the ring around the rosy of American murder trials.
It is arguably the stickiest piece of true crime folklore in American history. But here's the problem with folklore and, specifically with that rhyme.
What's that?
It prefers rhythm over accuracy. If we're looking at the source material, the autopsy reports, the trial transcripts, the actual forensic data from 1892, that rhyme is, well, it's essentially a lie.
A lie. Or just, a bit of creative license.
I'd call it a gross exaggeration that fundamentally changes how we view the crime. Forensically speaking, the rhyme is wrong on the weapon.
It wasn't an axe.
It was a hatchet, most likely, but it's also wrong on the victim count, and it's definitely wrong on the math. And frankly, it's wrong on the relationship, calling Abby her mother.
Ah, right, the stepmother.
Exactly.
Okay, so before we totally debunk the math, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a case that I've always described to friends as like the O.J. Simpson trial of the Victorian era.
That is actually a perfect analogy.
I mean, think about it. You have a wealthy, well-respected defendant.
Mm-hmm.
You have this gruesome double homicide that seems just impossible for a civilized person to commit.
Right. It doesn't compute.
You have a dream team of defense lawyers, seriously, the best money could buy back then. And you have a nation absolutely losing its mind over the newspaper coverage.
And crucially, you have an acquittal that nobody seems to believe.
Exactly. So our mission today is to take a stack of sources. We're talking 1892 inquest records, witness testimony, forensic maps of the house, and even some modern psychological profiling.
Oh, yeah.
And figure out who the real Lizzie Borden was. Because she wasn't some two-dimensional cartoon character with an axe. She was a 32-year-old Sunday school teacher living in a total pressure cooker.
And I want to look at the machinery of the justice system here. Because when you read the trial transcripts, you realize Lizzie didn't just walk free because she was lucky.
No.
No, she walked free because the legal system in 1892 simply could not process the idea that a woman of her class could hack her father to death. It wasn't just a murder trial, it was a referendum on gender and class in New England.
Okay, so let's start by correcting the record. Let's just toss out the rhyme for a second. What do the actual autopsy notes say?
Okay, so mother, who was actually her stepmother, Abby Borden, didn't get 40 whacks. The real number was 18 or 19 blows.
I mean, that's still a lot of whacks.
No.
That is not an accident. You don't slip and fall into a hatchet 19 times.
Oh, it is absolutely overkill. It implies a blinding rage. But it is less than half of what the rhyme claims. And Andrew, the father, the rhyme says 41.
And the reality?
The reality was 11.
11. Still brutal, but you're right. It's significantly less slasher movie than the playground song implies.
It changes the profile, doesn't it? 41 sounds like a maniac just flailing wildly. 11 sounds like, well, like a job that needed to be finished. Efficient, brutal, but focused.
So we have hyperbole right out of the gate. But the fact that we even know this rhyme more than a century later, that tells you something about the grip this story has on the American psyche.
It's incredible.
But to understand the violence, we have to understand the silence that came before it.
Mm.
We need to go back to Fall River, Massachusetts. It's the late 19th century. We need to walk into that house at 92 2nd Street.
And we need to talk about the man at the head of the table, Andrew Jackson Borden.
Andrew is the pivot point for everything. To understand the murder, you have to understand the money. And looking at your notes here, Andrew wasn't just, comfortable.
No, he was wealthy. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at roughly $300,000.
Which, if we run that through the inflation calculator to 2024 dollars, is somewhere around $10.5 million.
$10.5 million.
This is never work again money. This is generational wealth money.
It is serious money. He was the president of the Union Savings Bank. He was a director of textile mills, a major property developer. He came from a wealthy lineage but had really built it up himself. He was a self-made man who worshipped the dollar.
But, and this is the crucial but, that defines the whole family dynamic, right?
It's everything. His personality did not match his bank account.
He was frugal. And by frugal, I mean painfully cheap.
Painfully is the right word. We are talking about a man worth millions in today's money, living in a house that lacked indoor plumbing.
Wait, hold on. This is 1892. Was indoor plumbing standard for the wealthy then? Or was this just a times were tough kind of situation?
For a man of his standing, Absolutely standard. It was a common feature for the wealthy. The elite of Fall River lived on the hill, which was, geographically higher up. It caught the breeze, looked down on the city.
The nice part of town.
The very nice part of town. They had gas lights, they had indoor toilets, some were even getting electricity. Andrew refused all of it. He chose to stay down in the flats, near the business district, in a house without a flushing toilet, simply to save money.
So just picture this. It's August, it's sweltering heat, you're a 32-year-old woman, Lizzie, wearing corsets in these heavy Victorian layers. And to go to the bathroom, you are using a chamber pot in your room, or you have to go all the way outside to the barn to use a privy.
Well, your father is sitting on $10 million.
That is a recipe for resentment right there. It feels controlling.
It was incredibly controlling. And the layout of the house, it adds to that feeling of entrapment. This is a detail that gets lost in the movies, but if you look at the floor plan...
What about it?
The house had no hallways on the second floor.
No hallways. So how do you get from room to room?
You walk through the other rooms. To get from Emma's room to the back stairs, she had to walk through Lizzie's room. To get from Lizzie's room to the front, you often had to pass right through the parents' room. It was a panopticon. There was zero privacy. You could hear every floorboard creak, every whispered conversation.
So you have this intense physical proximity, this total lack of privacy, but at the same time, this huge emotional distance.
Kid chasm.
Let's talk about the women stuck in this house. Lizzie Andrew Borden, she's 32 years old when the murders happened.
She's 32, unmarried, and by all accounts, very active in the community. This isn't some recluse who sits in the dark sharpening knives.
No, she's a known quantity.
Very much so. She taught Sunday school to the children of recent immigrants. She was the secretary-treasurer for the Christian Endeavor Society. She was a member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. On paper, she is a pillar of Victorian virtue.
A pillar of virtue who hates her stepmother.
Hate is a strong word, but
yeah,
it's pretty accurate here. Lizzie's mother died when she was young. Andrew married Abby Durfee Gray 3 years later.
And Lizzie never accepted her.
Never. She refused to call her mother. She called her Mrs. Borden.
That is icy. Imagine living with someone for decades and still calling them Mrs. Borden.
It was a Cold War. Lizzie was quite vocal about her belief that Ab had only married her father for his money. And the maid, Bridget Sullivan, a 25-year-old Irish immigrant living up in the attic, she testified later that Lizzie and her older sister Emma rarely ate meals with the parents.
So they were literally living separate lives under the same small roof.
Exactly.
And then you add money to the mix. There was a specific incident involving real estate that really seemed to set things off right. This wasn't just some vague resentment, it was transactional.
This is the catalyst. Andrew decided to give a house, some real estate, to Abby's sister.
Oh, no.
Now, if you are Lizzie and Emma and you already suspect your stepmother is a gold digger, this confirms all your worst fears. They were furious.
They saw their inheritance being chipped away.
Their birthright being siphoned off to Abby's family.
So they demanded a payoff.
Essentially, they demanded a rental property of their own in retaliation. You gave her family a house, now you give us a house. And he did. They bought a rental property from their father for $1.
$1.
But then, just a few weeks before the murders, they sold it back to him.
For how much?
For $5,000.
Which is about $175,000 today. So they got a nice chunk of cash out of it.
They did, but the bitterness remained. The trust was completely broken. And then we have the pigeon incident.
Oh, the pigeons.
Yeah.
This is the detail that always makes people gasp. It feels so cinematic. Tell us about what happened in the barn.
So in May of 1892, just a few months before the murders, Andrew goes out to the barn with a hatchet.
Okay.
Lizzie had built a roost for some pigeons there. She kept them as pets. Andrew believed these birds were attracting local children who were hunting them, or maybe that they carried disease. His reasoning was always utilitarian,
Practical.
And brutal. He slaughtered the pigeons.
He didn't just, set them free or shoo them away.
No. He beheaded them with a hatchet.
That is incredibly violent. I mean, even if you think they're pests, to chop their heads off while your daughter who built the roost is around.
Well, the common narrative is that Lizzie was hysterical with grief, that she loved these birds, and this was an act of supreme cruelty by her father.
But is that true?
Some historians contest the severity of her reaction, saying she wasn't as devastated as the movies portray. But regardless of the volume of her tears, look at the symbolism. It is a violent act happening in the domestic sphere involving the very weapon that would be used later. It adds this layer of grim foreshadowing.
It establishes that the hatchet was a tool for solving problems in that household.
Exactly. And then just days before the murders, the pressure cooker goes literal. The entire house gets violently ill.
The mystery illness.
Yes. Andrew, Abby, even the maid. Vomiting, stomach cramps. Abby was actually terrified. She went across the street to their doctor, Dr. Bowen, and told him she thought they were being poisoned.
And that wasn't totally crazy, right?
Not at all. Remember, Andrew was a landlord and a bank president. He wasn't exactly the most popular man in Fall River. She feared retribution.
But there's a less sinister, albeit much grosser, theory about the illness. We have to talk about the mutton.
It's the detail that just turns your stomach. A family friend speculated that they had been eating mutton sheep meat that had been left on the stove for days.
In the summer heat.
In the sweltering heat of August. They didn't use the icebox effectively. They were just reheating this gray, rotting meat over and over to save money.
Food poisoning versus arsenic. But regardless of the cause, it just ramps up the paranoia in the house, doesn't it?
Massively. Abby thinks someone is trying to kill them. Lizzie and Emma are already hostile. The heat is unbearable.
And then we get to August 4th, 1892, the day it all goes down. Let's walk through this timeline because the window for this crime is incredibly tight.
It is impossibly tight, and we have to start the night before. August 3rd, Lizzie's uncle, John Vinicum Morse, arrives.
He's the brother of Andrew's first wife, Lizzie's mom.
Correct. He comes to stay overnight, ostensibly to discuss business property transfers again.
Which probably just poured gasoline on the fire with Lizzie and Emma. Uncle John is here to help Father give away more of our money.
That's the likely assumption. So the morning of the 4th opens with breakfast. Andrew, Abby, Uncle Morse, and the maid, Bridget Sullivan.
But not Lizzie.
Lizzie does not eat with them. She stays upstairs. Uncle Morse leaves at around 8:48 a.m. He has a very specific errand, buying a pair of oxen and visiting a niece. He has a perfect alibi.
And Andrew.
Andrew hangs around for a bit, then heads out for his morning walk shortly after 9:00 a.m.
So Andrew is out of the house. Morse is out of the house. Who is left?
You have Abby, the stepmother, you have Lizzie, and you have the maid, Bridget. Just the three of them.
Okay, let's look at murder number 1, Abby Borden. This happens while Andrew is out.
Right. Abby goes upstairs sometime between 9:00 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. She goes into the guest room, the room Uncle Morse had just slept in, to make the bed, and this is where the attack happens.
And the forensics here, they tell a very specific story about how it went down. This wasn't a fight, was it?
No. The evidence suggests Abby was facing her killer when the first blow landed.
So she saw them.
She saw them. She was struck just above the ear. This caused her to turn and fall face down on the floor. And then, the rage took over. The killer delivered 17 or 18 more hits to the back of her head.
While she's on the ground.
Straddling her, most likely, just hacking away. That is personal. That isn't a robbery gone wrong where someone panics. That is obliteration.
And here's the detail that chills me to the bone. Andrew comes back home around 10:30 a.m.
Right. He tries his key, but the door is jammed. It's bolted from the inside.
So Bridget, the maid, hears him and goes to unlock it. She's struggling with the triple locks. She curses under her breath, just a little frustration. And in that moment, she hears something.
She hears Lizzie laughing.
Perfect.
Standing at the top of the stairs laughing.
Now, why is that so significant? I mean, apart from being incredibly creepy.
Because of the layout we just talked about. If Lizzie was standing at the top of the stairs looking down at Bridget and Andrew, she would have been in a position where she could see into the guest room.
Oh, wow.
She would have been able to see Abby's body lying on the floor.
So she's potentially laughing at her father's frustration while her stepmother is lying dead just a few feet away.
It suggests a level of dissociation or coldness that is hard to fathom.
Yeah.
And when Andrew gets in, he asks where Abby is.
And Lizzie has an answer ready.
A very convenient answer. She tells him that Abby received a note asking her to visit a sick friend.
A note that we should definitely mention was never found.
Never found. No sick friend ever came forward. It was a complete fabrication. But it worked. It got Andrew to lower his guard.
So Andrew is home. He's alive. He thinks his wife is out running an errand. What does he do?
He goes into the downstairs sitting room to take a nap. He lays down on the sofa. Bridget, the maid, she goes up to her room in the attic, the 3rd floor, to rest because she is still feeling ill from that mystery sickness.
So Bridget is on the 3rd floor. Abby is dead on the 2nd floor. Andrew is asleep on the 1st floor. And Lizzie
Lizzie is the only other person accounted for in the house or the immediate vicinity.
And then comes murder number 2.
At approximately 11% a.m., Andrew is attacked while sleeping on the couch.
How do we know he was sleeping?
The forensics again. One of his eyes was split cleanly in two.
Wow.
It suggests his eyelid was closed, he didn't see it coming, he didn't raise a hand in defense. He was struck 10 or 11 times with a hatchet-like weapon.
And the timing here is what makes the whole intruder theory so difficult to swallow.
Exactly. We know Andrew came home at 10:30. The body was discovered by Lizzie at 11:10. That's a 40-minute window. But the doctor who arrived noted the blood was still fresh and flowing. The attack likely happened moments before Lizzie raised the alarm.
At 11:10 a.m., Lizzie yells to the maid, "Maggie, come quick! Father's dead! Somebody came in and killed him."
And note the use of Maggie. Bridget's name was Bridget. The family called her Maggie because that was the name of their previous maid.
That is so dehumanizing. You are just the help. Your real name doesn't matter to us.
It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the household hierarchy, doesn't it?
It really does. So the police arrive, and this is where the OJ comparison really starts to hold water for me, because the investigation was, let's call it botched.
Botched is generous. It was a disaster of assumptions. You have to understand the gender dynamics of 1892. The police officers arrive, all men, obviously, and they see Lizzie.
And what do they see?
They see a wealthy, religious, upper-class spinster. The idea that she could be capable of hacking her parents to death was simply inconceivable to them. It didn't fit their worldview.
But her behavior was weird, wasn't it? She wasn't acting like a grieving daughter.
It was bizarre. Witnesses described her as strange, contradictory, and poised. Too calm. She wasn't wailing, she wasn't fainting, at least not yet. She was just standing there.
And her story kept changing.
Yeah.
This is what would get you arrested in an episode of Law & Order in about 5 minutes.
Constantly. First, she said she heard a groan or a scraping noise. Then she said she heard nothing at all. She claimed she was in the barn for 20 to 30 minutes.
Doing what exactly?
She claimed she was looking for lead sinkers for a fishing trip.
In the barn, in the loft,
Yeah.
in 100-degree heat, for 20 minutes.
That was the police's reaction, too. It made no sense. Why would you be baking in a barn loft on the hottest day of the year while your father is napping? Then she changed it.
To what?
She said she was in the kitchen. Then she was ironing. She couldn't keep her alibi straight.
If I'm a detective and the only suspect in the house has 3 different alibis, I am putting handcuffs on her. Why didn't they?
They didn't even check her for bloodstains.
You're kidding me?
No. They admitted it later at the trial. They said they didn't do a proper search of her person or her clothes because she wasn't feeling well. They deferred to her social standing and her gender.
That is mind-blowing. If she had been a poor factory worker, or if Bridget the maid had been the suspect.
Oh, if Bridget had been the suspect, she would have been stripped and searched immediately, no question. Bridget was Irish, she was working class, she was an immigrant. She didn't have the protective shield of Victorian ladyhood.
So what about physical evidence? Or the lack thereof?
They find a weapon in the basement, right? A potential weapon. They find a collection of tools. 2 hatchets, 2 axes, and one very suspicious item. A hatchet head with a broken handle.
A broken handle? How convenient.
The police suspected the handle had been broken off recently because it would have been covered in blood. You can wash a metal head, but wood soaks up blood. So break the handle, burn it, wash the head.
That's pretty smart. But did the head look clean?
That was the problem. The head of the hatchet was covered in dust and ash. It looked like it had been sitting there for years.
So was it the murder weapon or not?
The prosecution argued that the dust was deliberately applied like makeup to make it look old, a disguise, but they couldn't prove it definitively.
And then we have the incident with the dress. This feels like this smoking gun that just got away.
The dress burning. This happened on August 7th, 3 days after the murders. The police have been in and out of the house, but they haven't arrested anyone yet. Alice Russell, a neighbor and a friend, walks into the kitchen.
Okay, set the scene for us.
It's Sunday morning. The house is still effectively a crime scene. Alice walks in and sees Lizzie standing by the stove, and she's tearing up a blue dress and feeding it piece by piece into the fire.
Alice must have been like, what on earth are you doing?
She was. She asked her. Lizzie's excuse was that the dress was covered in paint. She said she had brushed up against some wet paint days earlier and it was ruined, so she was just getting rid of it.
I'm just burning my clothes 3 days after my parents were brutally murdered. Nothing suspicious about that at all.
Alice Russell knew it was bad. She actually said to Lizzie, "I wouldn't let anybody see you do that, Lizzie." She knew exactly how it looked. And the significance is huge because the police never determined if that was the dress Lizzie was wearing on the day of the murders.
If it was, she was literally destroying the primary evidence right in front of a witness.
Exactly.
And then there's the poison, the prussic acid. This is the part that makes me think she'd been planning this for days.
This is another piece of the puzzle that points to premeditation. The day before the murders, Wednesday, Lizzie went to a local druggist, a man named Eli Bentz. She asked to buy 10 cents worth of hydrocyanic acid.
Cyanide.
Cyanide.
What was her excuse for needing, a deadly poison?
She claimed she needed it to clean a sealskin cloak.
Cleaning a cloak with cyanide, is that a thing?
No. The medical examiner later testified that prussic acid has absolutely no antiseptic or cleaning properties. It is a deadly poison, plain and simple. It kills you in seconds.
But the druggist refused to sell it to her, right?
He was a responsible man. He said, "I can't sell you that without a prescription, Miss Borden." She argued with him, but eventually left empty-handed.
So she tries to buy poison on Wednesday. Thursday morning, the parents are hacked to death. It paints a picture of a failed Plan A leading to a very desperate Plan B.
That is the logical inference. She wanted a clean, quiet death. Poison mimics the food poisoning they already had. It's plausible deniability. But when she couldn't get the poison, she had to resort to the hatchet.
But, and this is a huge but, this evidence never made it to the jury.
We'll get to that in the trial section. It's one of the biggest legal errors in the entire case.
Let's move to June 1893. The trial of the century is held in New Bedford, and the atmosphere must have been absolutely electric.
It was a circus. You have these prominent lawyers involved. The prosecution is led by Hosea Knowlton and William Moody, and Moody would later become a U.S. Supreme Court justice.
So a heavyweight.
A huge heavyweight. But the defense has George Robinson, a former governor of Massachusetts.
Bringing in a former governor is a serious power move.
It is. It signals to the judge and the jury that this woman has powerful friends. Robinson was charming, he was authoritative, and he knew exactly how to play on the jury's biases.
And Lizzie's image played a huge role here, didn't it?
Absolutely. She sat there day after day, the perfect picture of a grieving, pious daughter. She held a bouquet of flowers, she fanned herself. The jury was all male. Women couldn't serve on juries then, and the idea of convicting a woman like her was socially repulsive to them.
But the legal rulings also played a massive part in her acquittal. Let's go back to that poison evidence. Why was that excluded?
The judge ruled that the attempt to buy poison was too remote in time to be connected to the axe murders.
Too remote. It was the day before.
I know. It seems baffling now. But the judge's logic was strictly formal. He argued that poison and hatchets are fundamentally different methods. He essentially said, buying poison implies an intent to poison. It does not prove an intent to hack someone to death.
That's a stretch.
A huge one. He ruled that showing the poison attempt would only prejudice the jury against her without proving the actual crime committed.
That feels like legal gymnastics designed to protect her.
It was. If a lower-class man had tried to buy poison the day before murdering someone with a knife, that evidence would likely have been admitted as proof of general murderous intent.
And there was another huge exclusion, her inquest testimony. You mentioned earlier that her initial story was full of holes. Why didn't the jury hear that?
This is a Fifth Amendment issue, essentially. Before the trial, there was an inquest, a fact-finding hearing. Lizzie testified, but she didn't have a lawyer present. And crucially, her doctor had prescribed her morphine to help her calm down after the trauma.
She was high on morphine during the questioning.
She was medicated, yes.
Yeah.
Her testimony was erratic. She was hallucinating slightly. She was contradictory. Her defense team argued that because she wasn't informed of her right to remain silent, and because she was under the influence of narcotics, that testimony was involuntary.
And the judge bought it.
The judge agreed and threw it out.
So the jury never heard her stumbling over her own lies. They never heard the confused, contradictory Lizzie. They only saw the silent, composed Lizzie in the courtroom.
Exactly. The prosecution was stripped of its two strongest weapons, her own words and her attempt to buy what was very likely the first choice of murder weapon.
But the prosecution did have one dramatic moment. The skulls.
This was the climax of the trial. The prosecution brought the actual skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden into the courtroom. They had been defleshed.
Talk about theatricality. That is horrific.
It was shocking. They wanted to show the jury the specific damage to the bone, the grooves from the hatchet, to prove the ferocity of the attack. And when Lizzie saw them, her father's skull with the eye socket split, she fainted dead away.
Which probably garnered her a ton of sympathy. Look at this poor, fragile woman. She can't even look at a skull. How could she possibly create one?
Precisely. It completely backfired on the prosecution. It made them look like bullies tormenting a grieving daughter.
But the defense also had some solid points, right? It wasn't just smoke and mirrors. They had the timeline issue.
They did. This is where the case gets tricky, even for people who assume she is definitely guilty. The defense produced witnesses, Hyman Lubinsky and Charles Gardner, who placed Lizzie leaving the barn at 11:03 a.m.
Okay, let's do the math on that. If she's leaving the barn at 11:03.
And Andrew is killed around 11:03, and Lizzie raises the alarm at 11:10. It creates a window that is almost impossibly small.
What would she have had to do?
In 7 minutes, she has to kill her father with 11 blows, ensure he's dead, avoid getting any blood on herself, hide the weapon so well it's never definitively found, check her hair and clothes for any trace evidence, compose herself, and then start screaming.
That is the reasonable doubt.
That is exactly it. The lack of blood on her was the biggest hurdle for the prosecution. The experts testified that hacking someone like that, hitting an artery, would produce a significant spray. And Lizzie was clean.
Unless she did it naked.
That is the famous theory. That she stripped off her dress, committed the murders naked, washed off quickly at the sink, and put her clothes back on.
It sounds crazy, but in that heat, and with the doors locked, it's not impossible.
It's plausible physically, but psychologically. Yeah. It adds another layer of cold, calculating premeditation that the jury just couldn't accept from a woman of her standing.
So on June 20, 1893, the jury goes out. How long did they deliberate?
An hour and a half.
That's it, for a double homicide.
That's it. And most of that time was probably spent eating lunch. They came back with a verdict of not guilty. Lizzie Borden was acquitted.
And she said, "I am the happiest woman in the world."
She did. But I don't think she stayed happy for very long.
Before we get to her life after the trial, let's pause and really dig into the theories. Because if the jury said not guilty, the question remains, who did it? Let's run down the list. Theory A is obviously still Lizzie.
It remains the most plausible, despite the timeline issues. She had the motive, hatred of the stepmother, greed for the inheritance, and fear of losing her social status. She had the means, access to the hatchet, and the opportunity. She was there.
What about the psychological angle? You mentioned a fugue state theory earlier.
Right. In 1967, a writer proposed she entered a dissociative state, that she killed them but literally didn't remember doing it. That would explain why she was so calm and why her stories changed. She was genuinely confused because her brain had blocked out the trauma.
And then there is the abuse theory. This is the one that modern audiences tend to gravitate toward.
This gained a lot of traction in the 1990s. The idea that she was physically or sexually abused by her father. There is no direct physical evidence for this, but incest was such a taboo subject that it would never have been recorded or spoken about in 1892.
But it would explain the rage.
It would. The 18 blows to the stepmother for enabling it, the smashing of the father's face. It reframes the murder as an act of desperate self-defense against a monster.
It makes Andrew the villain and Lizzie the survivor.
Exactly. But again, it is speculation.
Okay, so what about theory B, Bridget Sullivan, the maid?
Bridget is the only other person in the house. The theory goes that maybe she snapped. She was sick, it was hot, she was ordered to wash windows on the hottest day of the year. Maybe she just lost it.
I'm not washing one more window. Hack.
Basically. But does a disgruntled maid kill the master and the mistress and then stay in the house to help the daughter? It seems unlikely.
There's a rumor about a deathbed confession, right?
There is always a rumor about a deathbed confession. Allegedly, she told her sister she changed her testimony to protect Lizzie. But Bridget moved to Montana, married, and lived a totally normal life. She didn't act like someone carrying a double murder on her conscience.
There is a wilder theory involving Bridget and Lizzie together.
Ah, the Ed McBain theory. He was a mystery author. He suggested Lizzie and Bridget were lovers.
And Abby caught them.
Abby caught them together. Lizzie killed Abby to silence her. Then Andrew came home, reacted the same way, and he had to go too.
It's salacious, and it made for a good movie with Chloe Sevigny, but is there any historical weight to it at all?
Not really. It's filling in the gaps with modern sensibilities. We want to explain the bond between the women, but there isn't hard evidence for a romance.
Okay. Theory C, Uncle John Morse.
The uncle. His alibi was almost too perfect. He remembered every single detail of the oxen he bought, the number of the streetcar conductor. The police found it suspicious.
But he was seen elsewhere, right?
He was verified to be out of the house by independent witnesses. So, unless he hired a hitman. But no mysterious stranger was ever found.
And we should briefly mention William Borden.
Right. The theory that Andrew had an illegitimate son who came to extort him, a writer named Arnold Brown pushed this for years. But a researcher named Leonard Rebello did the digging and proved that William Borden didn't exist in the way the theory required. He wasn't Andrew's son, so that one is effectively debunked.
And finally, the madman theory, the random intruder.
The defense loved this one. A maniac wandered in off the street. And strangely enough, there was a similar axe murder in Fall River shortly before the trial. A woman named Bertha Manchester was killed.
Did that help Lizzie's case?
It might have helped public perception, created a sense of fear in the town, but the man who killed Bertha Manchester was proven to be out of town when the Bordens were killed, so it wasn't the same guy.
So we always circle back to the house, the locked doors, the silence. It's just so hard to escape Lizzie.
It is the ultimate locked room mystery. And Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is usually the correct one, points directly to the daughter.
So Lizzie is acquitted? She walks free. You'd think she would take the money and run. Move to Paris, New York, anywhere else. But she doesn't.
She stays in Fall River. That is the stubbornness of the woman. She and Emma inherit a massive fortune. Abby died first, so her share went to Andrew, and then Andrew died, so everything went to the daughters. Lizzie was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And they bought a new house, right? A better one.
They finally moved to the Hill, the fancy neighborhood Andrew was too cheap to live in. They bought a large, modern house and named it Maplecroft. Lizzie even changed her name slightly. She started going by Lizbeth.
New name, new house, new money. She got everything she wanted.
Except acceptance. The town didn't forgive her. She was completely ostracized. The society ladies who had supported her during the trial, once she was free, they dropped her.
So she was a social pariah.
Totally. She'd walk into church and the pews around her would empty out. She was a pariah in a gilded cage.
That sounds incredibly lonely.
It was, and she started acting out. In 1897, in Providence, she was accused of shoplifting.
Shoplifting. She's a millionaire.
It suggests a certain compulsion, or perhaps a desire to feel something, to get a reaction. Or maybe she just felt entitled, I survived the trial, I can take this painting. It certainly didn't help her reputation.
But the saddest part of the aftermath for me is the relationship with Emma.
Emma stood by her through the trial. She was her rock. She lied for her on the stand. But in 1905, Emma abruptly moved out of Maplecroft.
Why? After all that.
They had a huge argument. Lizzie, or Lizbeth as she called herself, had thrown a party for an actress named Nance O'Neill.
An actress?
Yes. Lizzie had become quite fond of the theater crowd. She was spending time in Boston, hanging out with bohemians. Emma, who was much more traditional, disapproved.
Was there more to the Nance O'Neill friendship?
Rumors flew that it was a romantic relationship, that Lizzie was finally exploring her sexuality. Emma couldn't handle the scandal. They fought, Emma left, and they never spoke again.
That is tragic. They survived the murders, the trial, the media storm, and then they split over a party.
It speaks to the isolation Lizzie must have felt. She sought connection with these actresses, maybe because they were outsiders too. They didn't care about Fall River politics.
So Lizzie dies in 1927.
Pneumonia at age 66. Emma died just 9 days later in a nursing home.
Wow.
They are buried side by side in Oak Grove Cemetery, along with Andrew and Abby.
That is a crowded plot.
Indeed.
And the will. This is where we get a glimpse of her heart, maybe? A different side of her.
It is fascinating. She left $30,000 to the Animal Rescue League.
$30,000 in 1927 money. What is that now?
That's about $729,000 today.
For the animals.
For the animals. Perhaps penance for the pigeons? Or perhaps she simply found animals to be better companions than the humans in Fall River. Animals don't judge you.
So here we are over 130 years later. Why are we still talking about this? Why are we so obsessed?
It's the perfect storm. You have the wealthy spinster, the hot August day, the brutal violence, and the unsolved mystery. It's American Gothic in real life. It challenges all our assumptions about women, about families, about justice.
And the rhyme keeps it alive. We should mention the origin of that rhyme. It wasn't Mother Goose.
No, the folklore suggests it was a tune made up to sell newspapers. Or just a dark street ditty sung by kids. But it codified the story for generations. It turned a complex tragedy into a simple, brutal jingle.
And the cultural interpretations keep shifting. In the 70s, Elizabeth Montgomery, who played the witch in Bewitched, played Lizzie in a TV movie.
And fun fact, Elizabeth Montgomery was actually Lizzie Borden's distant cousin.
Get out.
Sixth cousin once removed. She said she felt a real connection to the role.
That is wild.
And then recently we had the movie Lizzie with Chloe Sevigny and Kristen Stewart, which leans hard into the feminist and lesbian angles. We keep reinventing Lizzie to fit our current cultural conversations. Is she a victim of patriarchy? A madwoman. A cold-blooded killer. She is a blank slate we project onto.
And you can even stay in the house now.
You can. It's a bed and breakfast. You can sleep in the room where Abby was killed. You can eat breakfast in the dining room where they ate the mutton.
I don't know if I could do the mutton, but staying there, it's on the bucket list.
It's definitely an experience. People claim it's haunted, of course.
Of course. So let's wrap this up. We've unpacked the rhyme, the timeline, the trial. What's the final takeaway for you?
For me, it is the silence of that house. You have this small, enclosed space. You have Bridget upstairs, Lizzie downstairs, and two people being hacked to death in between. The fact that the jury let her go because they couldn't conceive of a woman doing it is a historical lesson in bias.
For sure.
But the fact that no one else was ever seriously considered tells you that the police knew deep down who it was. They just couldn't prove it.
It's the dress burning for me. If Alice Russell had spoken up sooner, or if the police had seized that dress, history changes. One piece of fabric goes into the stove, and the legend is born.
It is a reminder of how fragile justice is. It hangs on a thread or, the handle of a hatchet.
I want to leave you with one provocative thought to mull over. We talked about the silence, but consider this. Lizzie Borden lived in that town for another 34 years. She walked the streets. She went to the shops. She passed the people who whispered about her every day. She never confessed. She never cracked. She never gave an interview where she slipped up. She lived in the shadow of that axe for 3 decades. Was that stoicism the mark of an innocent woman holding her head high? Or was it the icy detachment of a psychopath who believed she was justified?
Or perhaps it was a conspiracy of silence. Maybe the women of that house, Lizzie, Emma, Bridget, knew something the men of the law could never understand.
That is where we're going to leave it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Borden murders. Sleep tight, and maybe check the locks.
And don't eat the mutton.
Definitely don't eat the mutton. We will see you next time.